Hi, this is John with Fix It Planet. Today we've got a Galaxy Tab E. E is in Edward. That's the SM-T377A for AT&T. Not to be confused with the SM-T337A, which is a Tab 4. And we actually have a few of these to do. They're a little bit unique in the way that they can be put back together, so we'll kind of go over that a little bit during this video. And these belong to Ben E. Keith Company. They are the 8th largest broadline food service distributor and the 4th largest beverage distributor in the United States. Their headquarters are here in Fort Worth. Now on the back of this tablet, it looks like there might be a seam that you can get into to pry apart, but that's not where it's not where you have to be. And the tricky part really is getting in, finding an opening somewhere along the edge to get into. Once you get it started, it's not too bad. There's actually some plastic tabs or small indentations that you can get your tool into, and that will help you to pry out the midframe. I'll point that out here in a little bit. So the hardest part is just getting finding a good place to get in and get started. So I'm gonna explain a couple of things during this repair. It is from start to finish. So if you just need to change out the glass only or the front digitizer, I'm going to explain a little bit about that, but we're actually going for the display behind it, which the ones they brought in for me are actually all broken. So we're going to be able to salvage the digitizers, and I want to kind of emphasize that it is possible to do that if you need to. We're actually going to replace both the digitizer and the display for this company, but in this video I'm going to show you where we can at least salvage the digitizer in case you ever needed it for some other reason. Now, if you look close enough, you'll notice that there are some indentations that you can get your tool into, so you want to be careful that when you're prying, that you only pry in those locations on the plastic midframe and not into the motherboard. So there's one there, there's another one, there's another one, there's another one. Now, as you can see, if you're not careful, you can dig your tool into the SIM card and SD card trays. As well, on this other side here, I'm going to point out that you can hit the volume up and down and power buttons, which are here, located here. So you want to be careful. There's a little adhesive that goes all the way around the glass part, the digitizer, that kind of helps hold that frame in. If you are careful, you can just keep that intact. You can see a little bit of it loose down here. We're just going to stick it back down and reuse it. So that doesn't actually hold the glass in, but it kind of helps to seal around the edges. Now there's some Kapton tape or something that's covering up some of these connectors. The first thing we'll do is disconnect the battery. For this particular repair, whether you're doing the digitizer, the display, or both, you can leave the battery in its in position. You don't have to take it out for any reason. You should not have to, but you do want to be careful because underneath you can damage it. Now this cable I just took out is the orientation is got labels, and it looks different on both sides, so there should be no reason to be confused on which way to put it back. There's some lettering on the either end of it. Just kind of pay attention to the orientation there so you'll know where to put it back. Now I'm disconnecting just almost off frame at the bottom the digitizer cable. And this is the cable for the display that we're pulling tape off of now. So you want to be careful that you don't damage that cable because it does not come with the display. And the digitizer cable is, as long as it's not broken and you want to reuse it, be careful not to damage that cable. And there's the front facing camera. There's the rear camera. Now the motherboard's held in with some screws and 3 tabs that are located just above the battery. And so first we'll take out these screws. They're about that long and they're all the same, so no big deal. Doesn't matter where they go back. Now you can pull it out from the top, and I'll point out as best I can here, tab there, there, and there, that the board kind of slips underneath, so be aware of that when you go to put it back. And one thing I want to point out on this cable is a couple of little holes on either side, and those actually fit back into the connector on the motherboard. Just be aware of that when you put it back. And then when you go to take out the display, for example, we'll get to that eventually. So we're going to separate the glass now from the mid frame, and my display is actually damaged, so I don't care if I scratch it or anything, but you do want to be careful if you are not replacing that you don't run your tool in there and scratch it. About the only thing you really have to watch out for here is, besides the display, is the little home button in the middle down here at the bottom. This does not have any special. The buttons on the bottom left and right hand side on either side of the home button are actually part of the digitizer in this particular case. They are not a separate part, so you don't have to worry about tearing that. But here in this corner, the flex cable for the digitizer is kind of located in this area, so you want to kind of be careful right in here that you don't tear into that cable if you want to ever be able to reuse it. And this was actually just put on a hot plate prior to all of this. Now we're just going to take our plastic tool and just kind of separate everything the rest of the way. And we're going to get this home button carefully out of here because it is stuck to the packing tape that I've got on the glass. And down here, as we reach the top of this, here you can see the digitizer cable. So you can see how much of that is exposed to the edges. You want to really be careful when you run your tool through there that you don't damage that, if you want to be able to reuse it. The board on the bottom there doesn't have to come out. If you're not replacing the display, you can leave that exactly where it is. You don't have to take it out to replace the digitizer. And when we go to put the new digitizer back on, you'll see why. But if it is broken, you will have to separate it from a couple of strips of adhesive on either side of the mid frame, and if you're careful, you can remove that while keeping that adhesive intact so that you can reuse it. You can see there where I'm just smoothing it out a little bit. And we're going to clean all the way around the edges of the mid frame. We'll skip that part for the sake of time on the video. Be careful, again, that's the back of the other side of the battery, that you don't gouge it, cut into it, or anything like that. Again, you're going to transfer this cable from the old display to the new one if you're replacing it. It does have a piece of adhesive right there, so be careful that you don't tear it, because it sticks down pretty good. We'll take our new display and we'll put the cable back in where it goes. Now there's a protective coating masking on top of that, so don't have to worry about fingerprints, but we'll take that off towards the very end. Now we've cleaned up our, now this cable here goes through this slot that I just pointed at, and we've cleaned up our mid frame around the edges and have our new adhesive back in place. We're just going to press down a little bit around the edges and make sure that that display sat nice and flat. Put our motherboard back in. Remember the three little tabs that I pointed out earlier? That board slips underneath those and lays flat inside the frame. 2, 3 little tabs there. And we'll put our screws back. So if you're just replacing only the digitizer, only the front glass on this, you don't even need to take the motherboard out or anything, because the cable just wraps across the top of the motherboard there in the top of the frame. So there's no real reason to take all this apart. But at least this video will demonstrate pretty much a complete teardown for the most part. And it will help you if you need to just replace the front glass digitizer, or if you're doing the display, or both. In fact, if you were replacing the battery, you can certainly see how that would work. And it is down with adhesive, so you'll have to pry that loose. We're going to put our cameras back. And remember the thinner cable that we took out earlier. It's a little awkward. I'm trying to do this so you can see it on the video, so I'm having a little trouble seeing what I'm doing, because I don't want to stick my head in over the, in front of the camera, and then you can't see what I'm doing. In any case, we're supposed to be lining that cable up and getting it down inside there. There are a couple of lines that you can line up with each other and make sure that cable is seated all the way. Just kind of pay attention to that. Make sure they're seated all the way in. So the digitizer here again has its masking on the back side, so you don't have to worry about fingerprints. Be careful again because this cable has the two holes, so you want to make sure that they seat. Now you'll lay the digitizer down and center it on the home button first to make sure that that's not getting pushed down improperly. You can flip it over and then line it up with the connector and make sure those two little holes on either side are sitting in the proper locations inside the connector before you clamp it down, and then you'll be able to test it. Then before you go to putting that thing down and getting it crooked or anything, you'll want to make sure you test everything first, and once everything is tested and working properly, you'll be able to put the back on, and that will help you line up the digitizer perfectly. Reconnect our battery here and we'll test it out. So you won't get sound with the back off. The back needs to be on for it to get sound. External speaker is inside the back housing. And these tablets are distributed among all the truck drivers delivering food all over the United States. So it has a special application on there that they use for whatever. So we're going to make sure not to forget to reconnect to the antenna there, because they will need that. Make sure it's sitting down inside the channel so it doesn't get pinched. And now we'll be able to go ahead and put the back cover back on. And because there's some adhesive all the way around the edges, it's going to cause the glass to stick a little bit, and then as you're sort of snapping everything back into place, you're kind of putting pressure down on that tape, that adhesive. It's going to stick, so I'm going to have a little trouble getting it separated again to finish the job. Yeah, so you don't really want to use a metal tool. I was just checking to make sure. So eventually I get my fingernails in there, and I'm able to get that separated again, and that's just that leftover adhesive that we left. Now you won't be able to open this all the way up, because down here you're going to see this cable here is going to prevent you from opening this all the way up. So you will have a limited amount of space to work with. So we're going to pull the masking off of our new adhesive, which is what actually holds everything down inside the frame. That little bit of adhesive around the back cover is not really enough to hold this permanently in place, but it does kind of help seal around the border. And I left out just a little tiny piece of adhesive down here below the home button. We're just going to pop that in real quick. Okay. Now I'm gonna set it on its side, so hopefully you guys can see what's going on. But basically at this point we're going to take off the protective masking off of the digitizer, the back of the digitizer, and the display. And then we are going to remove the masking off of the adhesive towards the top here, which I cannot get to from there. I will have to reach underneath. So be careful that you don't touch anything at this point underneath or on the display. You will leave fingerprints. But you want to try and do that part as quickly as possible so that you reduce the chances of getting anything, any debris or anything in there. Make sure again that your home button is centered well, and now you can press everything down. And with the rear case cover back on, see, you'll be able to center the digitizer perfectly into position. If you try to put it on before you put the back on, you won't line it up. Somewhere or another it'll be out of alignment, and then you're going to have a problem getting it back on. Put our SIM card back in, power it on, do another quick test, and we're just about finished. Got our trusty polishing cloth waiting. And we'll fully charge this thing up before giving it back to the customer. Making sure all of the buttons are working. Now I've got sound. And that's about it, guys. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye now.